and welcome. I am Isa Silver, and I am a human design translator by profession. This video is my sharing of my exploration of the frequencies that are being brought into humanity this week, thanks to the sun moving through the gate of diplomacy and the earth moving through the gate of compassion. Now, as you can see, these are polar opposite frequencies in the sense of being yin and yang to each other. There is a tension between these precise opposites that keeps the wheel turning. You know, like the spokes in a bicycle wheel. When one of the spokes is off, there's a wobble in the wheel, but if they're all true, if they're all being themselves, even in direct opposition to each other, the wheel keeps turning smoothly. So the sun is in the gate of diplomacy, also called conflict by Ra Uru Hu in the Rave I Ching. And the earth is in compassion. The grounding of that sun's energy is here in a gate also called crisis. And what we're seeing here, the text that we're seeing, is the keynote from the Blue I Ching for the 6 lines of the Gate of Diplomacy. And I'm going to start with the first line, retreat. Retreat from conflict, if courage were foolhardy. This Gate 6 is like an emotional fire hose. It's really, really something strong. And the foundation of that is recognizing when it's not a good idea to be the one initiating the conflict. And in that duality, of course, there's a shadow and a light. And I won't go too deep into those shadow and light. The Blue I Ching is available for that. But to say that the light side of this is recognizing your own emotional stability, and don't take it badly if you retreat instead of go forward as the fire hose. But then sometimes on the shadow side, that retreat could be considered a failure. So it's the foundation of knowing when it's right to go at the other person emotionally, or at least that's how I see it. Now, for the foundation of compassion, the first line of the Earth's movement through this gate, steadfastness, to handle emotional crises with steadfastness. This is the foundation of compassion, or potentially even crisis. Back to gate 6, diplomacy. The natural at diplomacy is the gorilla. To find the weakest point is the middle path here. The natural at conflict will either have the sensitivity to find the weakest point or just blunder right into the conflict. The polarity in compassion is support. The natural at compassion has the imaginative assistance to others in times of crisis. Now, sometimes that support will only go to select people. You know how picky the second line is. But in its experience, that second line might be helpful to others who are going through something that they've never gone through before, which is what compassion is for, to help others through the emotional experience that they've never been through before. Now, in the third line of diplomacy, we get loyalty. And it's not something you think of when you think of a third line exactly, because you think of bonds made and broken. But this loyalty is the result of that process, and an emotional process of making bonds and breaking bonds. Secure support out of a weak position is the possibility in that experiencing of diplomacy. Meanwhile, balancing that out is transformation. To endure crisis in order to establish new orders. The experiencing of crisis leads to the potential of transformation. Something new can happen. The whole thing about what is a crisis, even, it's just something you haven't been through before. If you've been through it before, then you know that it's just kind of going from one side of the highway to the other side of the highway, or maybe there's a better metaphor, but hopefully you're following me. Back into the gate of diplomacy, this fire hose pointing at the life force center, right? This is the light, it's pointing at the sacral center. It's open or closed to being penetrated by life force. And the fourth line, the externalizing triumph. To amicably unfold natural and dominant power, which being the middle path means that on the shadow side, it's a total lack of emotional control, which has a destructive effect. And on the bright side, the fourth line is the natural emotional power to dominate relationships. Emotional power dominates relationships. And oh, can't I tell you about that, because I have an open solar plexus and an open sacral too. What balances out the triumph? Secrets. Secrets about what? Secrets how to survive crisis, how to survive going through things you haven't done before. The middle path is secret knowledge as a protection against crisis. Ra'urahu called it espionage. That's the not self frequency of that fourth line. Meanwhile, over in that fire hose of emotionality, which is euphemistically, okay, let's say aspirationally called diplomacy, mediation. This is as good as it gets. This is the exaltation of this entire gate. It's restraint in order to avoid conflict. The first line is retreat from conflict. If you can't win, if you can't beat the sacral center, retreat. And mediation is restraining, which means, of course, that the dark side has an insensitivity to the other's way, the opposite of mediation, so to speak. But the bright side is the ability to acknowledge different points of view. That furthers harmony. In the compassion side, the balancing out of the mediation is the underground, to survive regardless of conditions. This is about an individual survival of crisis and experience, no matter the circumstance. The shadow being a kind of nervousness that doesn't wait until the crisis has been passed. The duality of the fifth line, it's quite a something. So let's now go up onto the aloof perspective on the whole gate, shall we? To bring about peace is the role model frequency. To end conflict with sensitivity and reason. Now, there's a shadow and a light to this too, because the sixth line, it might dictate unacceptable conditions. Without emotional clarity, the sixth line might try to force peace without actually having the peace in herself. There's sixth line hypocrisy, right? But on the bright side, the highest form of reason, which realizes that life is sacred, combined with the emotional power to end a conflict by bringing about rightful peace. I wonder what's going to happen in the world this week with that coming up in a few days. On the compassion side, we're talking about the role model frequency of compassion. It's called justice. The blue line is the knowledge that justice will triumph. The shadow is the sorrow and cynicism that come with seeing that nothing one does can avoid crisis. Crisis will always happen because there's always going to be movement, there's always going to be emotional movement, and there's always going to be the potential to go from one experience to another experience through a changing of feelings. The bright side is the possibility to master crisis by maintaining a correct attitude. It's in the attitude that you master crisis. Now, I'll just say, as a former lawyer, I don't know about the word justice here, and this is Ra's keynote too, because justice seems like some kind of logical, calculated thing to me, and Gate 36 has nothing to do with logic, nothing to do with balancing of real numbers or something like this. I mean, the bright side here is an attitude that says, crisis was inevitable, but, I'm getting through it. And there's the bright side of the sixth line. So if you've listened to all of that without any knowledge of human design and your own human design chart, these are the sources I suggest to find yours. Maybe you have a gate 6 or 36. If you were born this week, then you do. And if you'd like to study the I Chings or the I Ching, I like to say Blue I Ching and Rave I Ching. Very different documents in certain ways, but both part of my work as a human design translator. Oh, and hey, by the way, that's an old one. I'm going to give you this one. You're welcome to write me if you would like to learn more about anything that I've shared today. And if you'd like to simply buy a reading or a service from me, you can go straight to my website and sign up anonymously, and then we'll be in contact after that. In any case, I'm wishing you the correct attitude to go through whatever you need this week, because crisis is inevitable and compassion will balance it out. Take good care of yourself.